This video was sponsored by Brilliant. Hey, happy Friday. This week Qualcomm made some really promising looking wearable chips, Big Gaming said no thank you to NFTs, and China might be catching up with the EU and the US in terms of manufacturing chips. Well, maybe. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. Okay, my release highlights this week start with the Google Pixel 6a, which went up for pre-order today, and the reviews are out. I've left the link to the one from my studio mate Kilian in the description, but in general, this phone has a lot going for it at $449, including a Google Tensor chip and good cameras. The one major downside is perhaps the 60Hz display, but oh well. Then Microsoft announced a genuinely hilarious obvious Facebook clone for businesses called Viva Engage as part of its Teams app. It even has stories. For once, it's Facebook having its features cloned, not the other way around. Also this week, after pretty negative reviews for their low-end GPUs, Intel has now revealed details of its flagship desktop GPUs as well, called the Arc A770 and the slightly lower spec Arc 750. Interestingly, Intel is already tempering expectations about the A750 GPU, while over on the flagship A770, some Intel people talked it up in a sneak peek with Linus Tech Tips, with one key takeaway being that Intel said, quote, "We're gonna kill everyone in price to performance." Also this week, Samsung announced that its Unpacked event, presumably for the Flip and Fold, will happen on August the 10th. And following up on that, Samsung's TM Rowe, whose name Google Docs insists on writing like this by the way, said that Samsung sold 10 million foldables in 2021 and that 70% of those were in the Flip form factor. Very impressive. Open to the public this week is also DALL-E, the AI image generator, which now is in beta and has a pricing structure. You can get AI-generated images from your text prompts for free, and you can even use them for commercial purposes, but after a free allowance initially and each month, you'll have to buy credits in increments of $15. I guess that makes sense. And finally, a non-release this week was Oppo India's YouTube channel, which was suspended right in the middle of a live stream of the launch of some of its new Reno 8 series and a new Oppo Air tablet into India. The band said, quote, "This account has been terminated for violating YouTube's terms of service, but hey, the channel is back now, so maybe it was a mistake or just a very elaborate prank." Okay, and for my first story of the week, we have a new Qualcomm wearable chip that actually looks pretty good. So Qualcomm unveiled its first new Snapdragon Wear chip since 2020, though the Wear label has now been dropped, so the new chips are now called W5 Gen 1 and W5 Plus Gen 1, and they come with some very welcome improvements. The first is a shift to 4nm manufacturing, which is a big shrink from the 12nm geometry chips in the previous Wear 4100, which even when they came out were far from the bleeding edge. Now the W5 series really is, and Qualcomm actually acknowledged that these chips are purposefully designed for wearables, not repackaged mobile chips as we've seen in the past. Now, they didn't say if TSMC or Samsung is making the chip, but usually if a company doesn't say, that just means Samsung. The W5 Plus is the interesting one, as it's designed for premium smartwatches, and Qualcomm says that its wearable hybrid architecture offers 50% lower power, 2 times higher performance, and 30% smaller size compared to the last generation. Qualcomm also said that it had new low-power innovations, such as deep sleep and hibernate states to extend battery life further, which is probably the biggest win if true. On the CPU front, it uses a quad-core A53 design plus Cortex M55 cores, where the low-power M55 processor can now handle simple tasks like always-on displays, music, notification, tracking, and so on. All of this should mean smaller, sleeker watches on the Wear OS front, with both round and square watch reference designs already shown. Many Wear OS partners are kind of fashion houses rather than real tech companies, so I bet that those designs will actually be used quite a lot. Oppo and Mobvoi are the first 2 named customers of Qualcomm to be using the chip, and unlike the last gen, which was announced and then took forever to come to market, this one should show up in an Oppo Watch 3 in August already, and a Mobvoi TicWatch should come to China even before that. That's pretty fast. All of this should stack up relatively well against Samsung's own 5nm Exynos W920, which is the only really modern chip on the Wear OS side right now, and maybe even go toe-to-toe with Apple, although that might be a little bit optimistic. So this was long overdue from Qualcomm, but it's a step in the very right direction, and it might make wearables and the whole Wear OS ecosystem a lot more interesting. Okay, and my second story of the week is going to be a short one, and it is a complete rejection of NFTs by some of the biggest names in gaming. So first, Sony announced a new PlayStation loyalty program with digital collectibles, and after people started freaking out, the company hilariously rushed to tell everyone that these were definitely not NFTs. No, definitely not. And they don't use blockchain technologies at all. I mean, they're still collectibles, but okay. And if that wasn't enough, Mojang, the maker of Minecraft, also said in an interesting and very well-written blog post that dropped out of nowhere that, quote, integrations of NFTs with Minecraft are generally not something that we will support or allow. Mojang also trashed blockchain asset managers as they can disappear, as we've seen too often, if not complete rug pulls from NFT makers. Mojang then said that, quote, the speculative pricing and investment mentality around NFTs takes the focus away from playing the game and encourages profiteering, which we think is inconsistent with the long-term joy and success of our players. That's actually very nicely put, and I really don't think that Minecraft needs NFTs. Okay, and my third story of the week is going to be a very surprising reveal that China might have gotten to be on par with the US when it comes to chip manufacturing technologies, and maybe even ahead of the EU. Now, there is a massive asterisk here, but let's talk about the news. So a chip teardown by industry watcher Tech Insights shows that China's SMIC very quietly started shipping 7nm chips, not just testing or designing, but actually shipping them. Last we heard, SMIC was still kind of struggling with 14nm, so that would be a massive leap forward. Now, the chips are being shipped in a new Bitcoin miner of all things, and we don't know how many chips SMIC can make, as they really struggled with volumes in the past, but either way, SMIC managed to do all of this after being blacklisted by the Trump administration from buying the tools that would normally be needed for advanced nodes, like the ASML machines doing EUV. So this 7nm SMIC process, called N+2, apparently has the exact same characteristics of TSMC's N7, down to the smallest details, in no small part because China allegedly hired at least 100 veteran TSMC engineers, but also because this is the most modern node one can theoretically make using older DUV machines rather than the more current EUV ones. Asianometry made a great video explaining why 7nm is kind of the hard limit for this tech, so we also don't know if they will be able to go much further than this, but 7nm is still technically the most advanced Intel can get in the US, and actually more advanced than we have here in Europe. Now, manufacturing for more advanced nodes is planned for both the US and the EU, and we don't know if SMIC might be able to move forward from here. It's actually kind of doubtful, plus there's a very realistic chance that they might be struggling with yields and quality control and prices and quantities and a whole lot more, because they kind of had problems with that in the past, but still, this is a potentially huge deal for China. Meanwhile, the US Senate this week voted to advance the CHIP Act, a bill full of subsidies and support to boost semiconductor competition by getting companies to build plants in the US too, which is one of the things that Intel has been waiting for to help it build its announced foundry in Ohio. There is a massive shortage of skilled engineers across these firms, which is becoming a real geopolitically relevant resource and something that can often be quite profitable to the ones who wield the knowledge. And if you want to become an engineer wielding such powers, there is no better place to start than Brilliant. Knowledge like computer memory, machine learning, quantum computing, and more. Brilliant's courses are crafted by award-winning teachers, researchers, and professionals from MIT, Microsoft, Google, and more, and they cover topics from beginner to advanced levels. Speaking of Google, they also have a really fun course on learning how to build a search engine kind of from scratch. The helpful thing about all of Brilliant's courses is that they are super interactive and well structured. Classes help you learn by breaking down complicated concepts into small chunks, and then you do an exercise after each one, so you practice what was just explained right away. That ends up building a deeper understanding versus just listening to someone explain a concept without engaging with it. This way you can get better at your job, or get a new job altogether, or just learn something to be smarter. You can try Brilliant for free using brilliant.org/TFC, and the first 200 people who sign up using that link will also get 20% off their annual premium subscription. So check them out, happy learning, and I'll see you next week.